Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today came highly recommended to me by a platinum board member who I truly just admire. He says to me, Charlie, you got to get in touch with this person. She's phenomenal. She was a news anchor. She was a QVC host. He was a public information officer, a chief happiness officer, marketing and communications VP, author, speaker, and so forth. If there's one thing that you want to kind of sum up all that experiences into one big nugget, it all comes down to communication, not just any communication. We're talking really effective communication. And ultimately, as a business leader, whether you're running a seven-figure business, eight-figure business, or you're just a leader inside an organization, you'll find that in many ways, you're only as good as your ability to communicate, whether you're communicating that vision or whether you're trying to inspire or motivate a team or just to communicate to your clients and customers as to, why they should trust you or do business with you and so forth. So communication is really the essence behind everything. So my guest today is a master expert at communication. She's also the CEO and founder of Vici Communications. Without further delay, Brenda Viola, welcome to the show, my friend.
It is so lovely to be here. And I've heard great things about you through our mutual friend. And I'm excited to speak to your audience because I know they're all wildly successful individuals who probably are already great communicators. But I just want to inspire everyone. You can be even better. I think everyone can up their communication game. And in today's world, it's not just in front of people, one-on-ones, group meetings, team meetings, it's Zoom, it's everything. And there are ways that you can improve that are so important. That's why I created this class called How to Be Heard Without Screaming. And I have learned that it's not always the squeaky wheel that gets the oil.
Got it. So for our CEOs and our founders listening that want to be able to communicate that vision effectively, what is the best way to do that?
So I always say that no team will ever rise higher than your own level of enthusiasm and passion. So where does that come from? And I think having clarity about what your vision is, clarity that you can support with stories that people can engage with and understand. If you're not clear on your message, be quiet until you are. Because then when you are clear, you're going to have power in your delivery and your level of enthusiasm will help bring everybody up with you.
So I understand what you're saying too about that motivation, that enthusiasm and whatnot. So obviously that's catchy, that's infectious when somebody is, but there's going to be other people that just aren't really as naturally excitable. And so does
Right.
that mean that they can't be effective communicators and sharing that vision if they're not naturally excitable? Or
Such a
how would
great
you
point.
guide
Because
them?
we want everybody to be their authentic selves. Absolutely. And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That care is really what's going to open people's ears. And sincerity plus preparation equals eloquence. So speaking from your heart, speaking from your truth, being you wrapped up in your personality with your clear vision, but then prepare. Some of the smartest people I know think that they can wing it in important conversations or important meetings, and they do so at their own peril. And so my herd plan kind of outlines how you can be fully prepared so you don't get done. Stay on terra firma and get your point across. But yeah, we all come in all different sounds and sizes and personalities. Be you, but be sincere, show you care, and be clear and be prepared.
I know a number of people that have been on TV, and TV is really hard and challenging because it's not just a matter of being able to communicate. There's another part that is difficult. How do you keep their attention? Because what you don't want them to do is you don't want them to change the channel. You don't want them to go somewhere else. And the same thing when we're communicating with somebody today, we've got so many distractions. We've got somebody who's going to pull out their cell phone or check their email or go on Facebook or whatever that might be. So what are the tips that you can suggest to somebody on how to keep somebody's attention?
Nobody wants a soliloquy or a monologue. Testing it out first, testing your material out first with people that are not going to just suck up to you and that will give you honest feedback will help you prepare so that you can anticipate, where is there a lull in this? Where do I need to
Sure.
craft a story that will engage their attention? Maybe I should stick a poll in there so that I can check the pulse of my audience on a Zoom meeting. But if you don't try it out on trusted people or a coach, you don't know, you're flying blind.
So I'll tell you some of the tricks that I've been using, and then you could tell me whether or not my tricks are actually tricks that you would recommend or endorse, or if you tell me that I'm actually doing some of the wrong stuff, which would be interesting. But I find that when I'm communicating, I want to keep people's attention. I notice that in movie trailers, they change the camera view anywhere between 8 and 30 seconds. You'll see their front side, and then they zoom, and then they go to the side between 8 and 30 seconds. And so when I'm presenting to a group, whether it's my board of directors group that I'm presenting to, or I'm standing on stage, I'll often stop 8 or 30 seconds in and I'll check in with the audience and I'll say something like, all right, so who's with me? Let me see a show of hands. Or I'll get them to nod, I'll nod, or I'll stop and I'll check in. Brenda, are we on the same page? And there'll be just this constant engagement. Then you tend to see that because I'm calling on people or calling on the audience sort of randomly, that there's much more attention. But when you're engaging with somebody one-on-one, you can stop and pause and be like, so Brenda, are we on the same page? Are you following what I'm saying?
I'll tell you what, there is a trend that I see in speakers today that I would like to expunge from the world, which is ending almost every other sentence with the word right.
Oh, I get it.
It's like you're trying to get everybody to agree with you, and it almost presents from a posture of insecurity. And I know that you are not doing that. And I
Sure.
think it's a great tactic to keep everybody engaged. But you also don't want your audience living in fear of, holy God, is he going to call on me? Am I going to have to say something? They're not even able to just relax. The best thing you can do for your audience is help them relax and feel comfortable. And the more comfortable you are with your message and with yourself, the more relaxed they'll be. If what you're doing, Charles, is working for you, then hey, stick
Sure.
with it.
Sure.
Absolutely. But I also find that some of the most powerful moments are the pause. Silence, for whatever reason, terrifies people when they are not prepared. And so it can be used as a powerful tool to get your message across with pregnant pauses.
Yes.
Makes people lean in a little bit more. But then on the flip side, if you are on the receiving end of it, don't be so nervous that you keep talking and then you have diarrhea of the mouth because you want so much to fill that
Yes.
silence. You just keep saying things. When you're prepared, you know your talking points, and then two powerful words: shut up.
Yes.
Because the more you keep talking, the more you dilute your message. And isn't the whole point to get through? Information is putting out. Communication is getting through. And it's not an excess of words that helps you get through.
Yeah, I get that. And, I think there are going to be times, there's peaks and troughs in a presentation. And there are peaks when you want the audience engagement and you want them to talk and you want them to raise their hands and you want them to do this and that, take some sort of action. But then there's the troughs when you make a point, and then there's that moment of silence where it's like, and your voice comes down and you lean in and then you make the point, and then it's a pause that you got people going, well, then what happened? But if I was like, and I wasn't making it whole, who understands what I'm, but it's like, wait a minute, I'm missing the point, because that's not the point. The point where you need somebody to be like, okay, so what happened? That's a somber, like, boom.
That's the emotional resonance that's so important between your delivery and your message. They cannot be incongruent. And I
Right.
so appreciate that you are willing to open the veil there, because I think what far too many people do when they are polished or when they've got their talking points and they've got their messaging, they forget to reveal themselves. People have asked me, why did my company name end up being Vici Communications instead of Viola Communications? And the truth of the matter is, Vici means I conquered. And between
Oh,
21 and 23, I conquered. I lost my mom, my partner, my dog, my house, my job. It was like a bad country song.
oh my
I
gosh.
was living it. And in that chrysalis period, and everyone goes through chrysalis periods, I think that is where we connect with our humanity and our audience when we're willing to share that, yeah, okay, I'm up here. I look good. I smell good. I've got a message, but I'm a human being. And how did I get to where I am today? How did I rise from the ashes to become this person that I am today? It's not perfection that moves people. It's your relatable story and being able to tell it. And I always love to tell the story of my logo, which is the butterfly, Charles, because in that chrysalis, the caterpillar sometimes wonders, am I ever going to get out? And so you could be tempted to try and help it out of the chrysalis, except if you do, the butterfly might be beautiful, but it can't fly.
Mm.
It is in the pressing against a chrysalis that you get the strength in your wings so that you can fly. So it's a little side journey, but for anyone in your audience today that may be going through a dark time, I encourage them to keep pressing on, because it may not look like it, but they are creating strength in their wings so that they can fly and realize their potential and fulfill their purpose. I
Yeah,
think
right.
everything can improve. Can I just tell you one other funny story? And can you get a word in edgewise in this interview?
I would love to. By the way, when you did mention about, the challenges and so forth, it is true. And science has been able to prove that with every challenge, there's an equal and opposite opportunity. And that's because everything all the way down to the smallest observable molecule, there's a positive and there's a negative, and there's always balance. Everything changes. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up that point, but you did have a story and I want to make sure that we got to your story.
Well, let's see. Now you just provoked yet another story, Charles. I have to say that these challenges we face, the suffering and the pain of life, these are not things we would have ever chosen. It's what we choose to do with them that can make us or break us, that makes us bitter or better. And so, I would not be who I am today if I had not gone through all those things I would have never chosen. So there is that
Sure.
gratitude for it and all that. So this how to be heard thing. I was in a leadership class. Have you ever been in a leadership class where everybody is clamoring to be the most awesome leader in the group? Everybody's trying to assert themselves and prove that they are worthy of being in this leadership class. And look, I know your audience, they're filled with leaders, accomplished leaders, but sometimes ego can get in there and that can muddle your message as well. So I was in this leadership class trying to prove myself. And every time I said something, I heard crickets. How annoying for a communicator.
Yeah.
Nobody was listening to me, right? There was this one woman in the class. Every time she talked, everybody leaned in and took notes. And I didn't know what her secret was. It wasn't that she was amazingly charismatic. You know, there was nothing obvious. So I had to take her to dinner and say, okay, what is your deal? What do you have going on? Why is everybody listening to you? And she said, Brenda, it's strategic. And I started to take notes. And she said, I am always the last to speak in the room. I listen
Mm.
to what everybody else has said. I take notes. I write down my thoughts. When someone else has said one of my thoughts, I cross out my thought. So by the end, when everybody has had their say, the only thing that's left is the original idea left on my sheet. Before I say that original idea, I mention the other excellent ideas that were raised prior to me. By
Mm.
name, I call out the person who said, Joe said this. And that was a really good point. And then Lisa said this, which was equally interesting. And I just want to submit. And then boom, drop the mic. She has made her point. Everybody feels good using the whole Dale Carnegie system of using people's names, which people love to hear their names. And she has been heard, and everybody thinks that she is brilliant. And she is brilliant, by the way.
Sure.
But I learned not to be the first person to speak up if I really and truly want to be heard. Everybody wants to feel like they've been listened to, and then they are more likely to listen to you.
I like that. And not only is that good for sales, well, I'll tell you one little piece of humble pie that I had the other day. I had a conversation with one of my team members, and he suggested something to me, and I immediately dismissed it. And I gave him what I believed was right. And fortunately for me, he was confident enough in the relationship that I have with him that he reached out afterwards and he said, "Hey, with all due respect, you dismissed me so fast that I don't believe you actually heard what I was trying to tell you." And I said, "So what were you trying to tell me?" And when he told me, it was so different than what I heard the first time. And when he told me the second time, I realized that he was in fact right. And that if he didn't have the courage to stop me and to come back and tell me, I would have made a decision that inevitably would have produced fewer results than the one that, had I listened the first time, I would have got right. So I think, when we're talking about communication, both and how we receive communication and how we share that communication, what you said about listening, when we're receiving communication, I find that the most effective leaders are curious. Instead of saying, hearing the communication for just the words that have come in, maybe asking or looking intently and being like, why did you say that? Or why did this come up now? Or how did this come to be? And then when you pull back those layers, one after another, there's a certain brilliance that comes out that it's like, wow, that changes everything. I didn't think about that.
And what you've done in the process of caring enough to go into those layers is you've strengthened the relationship with that employee, with that
Yes.
team member, and they will speak up again and again. Your danger zone is when the people that had been the most engaged start being silent. When your people stop speaking up, you've got a problem. If you haven't dusted off your core values in 5 years, they need to be looked at again.
I
How
agree.
are they being implemented in your organization? Or are they just BS? Are they just words on or on a mouse pad? Are they the keys to both coaching and praise in your organization? Are you willing to even call a high performer on a violation of core values? And an organization will never rise higher than the worst behavior that the leader accepts. And everything rises and falls on leadership. I love the fact that you were humble enough to go back and look at it and go
Sure.
into those layers. If you are good to people, man, they are going to be good to you. And you can ride that wave through so many iterations of your company. No company stays the same. No relationship stays the same. But man, if you have people that are willing to link arms with you, I love following a brilliant leader. I love when someone they had the vision to create this amazing company. There's no doubt that they have so many things that I can learn from them. But if they're humble enough to think that I can also contribute and you can learn from me too, we put in so many hours at work every day. What makes it fulfilling? It's the relationships. I have never burnt a bridge in my career, and I'm grateful for that. And my biggest client is my former employer
Mhm.
because relationships are everything, and listening and learning and going through good and bad times. And you know what? When I went through that period of time of losses in my life, I will never forget how my employer did not treat me like the VP of marketing. They treated me like a human being who needed
Sure.
space, who was grieving, who was normally an A player, but at best could be a B minus during that period of time, giving
Mhm.
me space to just be human. And then around the other side of it, I wanted to give 200% if that was possible
Sure.
because of relationship. Relationship is everything.
Well, I know we're pushing up against the clock and, we've talked about a lot of different things, the importance of communication and so forth. One of the things that we'll find as leaders is that everybody also has to be communicated with slightly differently. And there's, when you talked about that, there's no one size fits all. Now, there may be certain frameworks that are great, to follow, but there is also the recognition that what may motivate you, Brenda, and the way that I communicate with you would be different than I would be communicating with somebody else and so forth. And it just reminds me of a conversation that I had with another executive earlier this morning. And there are two executives, two C-suite members. One C-suite member is angry at the other C-suite member. And the C-suite member that he's angry with really doesn't understand exactly what he did. There was no intention to upset one person from another, but it was how it was being interpreted that was actually the challenge. And, it's come down to what we were talking about earlier about making sure that we're getting clarification. So, I'm interested, like, why did you say that? Listening to tonality, understanding how communication is received, that maybe I have to own the fact that however I'm communicating with you is not the right way that I should communicate. And that simple recognition is saying, look, you may not have told me, but I heard your nonverbal communication. And that right there, again, strengthens the relationships and opens those communication channels. In the same way, if you're talking to me and I'm getting triggered left and right, I can then say, hey, Brenda, I know you probably don't intend to upset me or trigger me in some way, but when you said this, I interpreted it that you were trying to tell me this, and it's probably not the case. Is that a fair statement?
So what is so perfect about that approach is you've not put them on the defensive.
Very
It's all in
important.
how you say a thing. If you say, you really seemed attitudinal in that meeting. What's going on with you? Totally different vibe than, I was picking up on these cues and I'm probably wrong,
Yeah,
giving them the benefit of the doubt. When I would deal with reporters that would bungle a story and get the headline wrong, I never called them up screaming, saying, how could you get the story so wrong?
right.
Because this is our relationship. I have to work with this reporter as a PIO for the next however many years. I'm sure you didn't mean to get that wrong. I'd love to go over some of the facts with you because maybe I wasn't clear. And owning your own place in the communication. These two C-suite people that are angry at each other, one of my favorite quotes about communication is the less people know, the more they yell. And what's behind any yelling? There's always a fear.
Yeah,
If you can get to that fear and calm that fear, you can then get to communication that
yeah.
is effective and then back to relationship and off we're running again. But yeah, really, really great point. I love your stories. We could talk forever. Absolutely.
We can. And I know we're pushing up against the clock. So, where this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast, if there was one tip, your biggest, best tip for CEOs and founders that want to take their company beyond seven figures, what would you tell them?
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
I
And
agree.
dust that off. Dust that off. Remember why you started this company in the first place. Remember the days where it was just a laptop in a basement or a garage and the vision that created this thing. Look around you and see the people that are willing to link arms with you. See them and hear them. And don't be afraid to show your heart because it's in doing that that you can build bigger and better and greater. And it's so darn satisfying too.
Awesome. Now, people want to learn more about you and your book and everything else. Where do we send them?
Everything is at brendaviola.com. And also, I am willing to do a free Zoom tune-up with any member of your audience. Free 15 minutes. I will change your Zoom game or your online appearance and presentation in 15 minutes, absolutely free. Go to Brenda at brendaviola.com, brendaviola.com, free consultation, and we'll make it happen. Take it to the
Awesome.
next level.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. And as always, for more tips, strategies, and information for taking your company beyond seven figures, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gadet with my new friend, Brenda Viola, and I will see you in another episode.
Thank you, Truce.